Hey folks, wanted to do a quick intro to this conversation I had with Zeno Mercer, greatest name in finance, I gotta tell you. We talk about AI, we talk about all the ways it's gonna impact different industries. I learned a lot in this. I think it was provocative. I look forward to having a lot more conversations with him. And kudos to Zeno for being a good sport. He had no idea I was gonna hit record. So anyway, enjoy. So Zeno, I've read a bunch of the stuff that you've done. Let's start out with ChatGPT because come on, it's like we can't get away from it. It's every freaking headline in the world right now. Tell me a little bit about your experience with this because you came at this knowing a bunch about AI and robotics and automation and then ChatGPT landed. So how did you perceive it when it hit?
The way that it rolled out to the public was definitely momentous. All of a sudden, everyone that had been focused on other technologies for a long time or even not even focused on technology at all were suddenly interested and able to use this technology. Whereas most of the time, this research in the back end, these core generative models have been more on the research side or deep within the enterprise and not released to the public. However, GPT, even through OpenAI, had been released for several years in previous models. And so I actually am, personally know the founders of some companies that have been running off GPT-2 through OpenAI for years before. So I've been aware and seeing this creep up, but not many people were that interested in it. Part of it was capabilities. Part of it was just the friction to getting to that. You had to be aware of it. You had to pay for it, et cetera. So now all of a sudden you have this open model freely available to the public, and people were able to actually create things with it. And it was a tool, right? I mean, every tool that has been brought forth to humanity has normally taken years and years and years of time to get disseminated. This was basically instantly, within weeks, months, hundreds of millions of users because of that.
But the thing that was so interesting to me is that the use case that they dropped out, particularly with the ChatGPT 3.5 drop, which is the first one that I think a lot of people had some aha moments about because it was credible in terms of an interlocutor. You could talk to it in a way that felt very Turing test winning.
Yes.
And then with 4 coming after it, people had this experience of it solely as a language partner, right? As a conversant in a discussion.
Right.
And then tried to whip it into all sorts of weird behaviors. But then meantime, so that's what all the headlines were about. But then meantime, the API and the way that they sort of rolled out the tool set for very average programmers, that to me was the mind shift. How does that impact the industrial side of things? Because yes, there's this cute, fun tool that's saving some people some time writing their essays, but the back end stuff is really fascinating in terms of its ability to accelerate knowledge. So where should we expect to see that crack into actual industry as opposed to just a cultural meme?
Name an industry, and I'll tell you how. I mean, even right now, Microsoft invested in OpenAI, right. Basically acquired it, but it's not exactly that. But
for the first $100 billion.
Yeah, exactly. to a point. Interesting model, but I think what we'll see, and they're already seeing, is deployment of GPT through just kind of knowledge management systems, right? Everyone right now, maybe companies are on SharePoint. You've got SAP. You've got all these. COVID hit. And then you had all this digital transformation. Companies that weren't on the cloud or not really that good at this digital environment had to quickly get up to speed with that. Now we're kind of seeing the next level of that is actually automating and collecting intelligence, inference models. So it's not just getting from point A to point B, it's understanding the pathways between those and figuring out how to automate those in ways that were not just human-made. Recently, OpenAI introduced Code Interpreter, which is, as you mentioned, there's plugins, there's different modules being attached to it to allow it to connect and expand beyond just that chat interface, also through APIs. With Code Interpreter, it's doing synthesis and data visualization that normally was this bespoke company, and now it's just kind of being seen as this open source add-on. Every company will probably start doing it, whether it's in healthcare, understanding patient populations, or drug discovery. Even IBM and Moderna have inked a deal to work with generative AI and quantum computing to work on building out novel new mRNA drugs to help cure cancer, diseases, et cetera. And a lot of this is going through lots of data and finding things that it would take humans years and years to do. So it's this collaborative human and AI juncture that's going to allow us to solve so many problems that were unsolvable for many years.
Do you have any thoughts on alignment and how we sort of get past this model of it just being an arms race?
Yes. I mean, it will continue to be an arms race. That's inevitable. That's true with any human technology that's ever been invented. Yes, you do have an alignment issue. You've got on some camps where, okay, AI and good AI will always win, and people will collectively, humanity will collectively not zero-sum game itself out and work to align and squash bad actors within that sphere. And so in that sense, you do have to keep this arms race going, to keep investing, to stay ahead of the curve. And then we talked about enterprise. Well, the enterprise is going to use this to maximize its own profits and look at their own stakeholders and their shareholders, right? A new model that might start to exist more and more will be multi-shareholder, stakeholder interaction that hopefully new company designs or companies will go to this model that does benefit more people. So companies that just try to squeeze out other people and don't go to this multi-stakeholder model that benefits more people, if it's being used for evil, as Google's old model used to be, I think you'll see that there'll be a deflection or a movement away from that. And I think you will see a gravitation towards using AI for good and people putting money and interacting with it for good.
I don't know. That sounds pretty Pollyanna to me. I hear the words you're saying. I feel like we already have so much evidence that capitalism is trapped in these multipolar traps of their own devising.
This could disrupt capitalism.
Well, or does it become the tool of the ultimate capitalist? I mean, I think that to me is the bigger issue. There's a lot of discussion about the existential threat. Are we making Skynet?
Right. We'll put that into a separate box.
Let's put that over there.
That's a separate box because
I'm not too.
Humanity is going its own direction regardless, and we obviously have to try to use tools for good.
Right.
And I agree with you that capitalism will try to stay on top and make money and squeeze profit and middlemen in between. On the flip side, though, there have been people, for example, let's look at healthcare in the United States. Costs have been going up, outcomes have been going down, even as healthcare technology improves. I mean, it's broken. Like it's the best it's ever been and it's the worst it's ever been. And at the same time, you've got administrative costs that have gone out of hand, but you also have preventative and other types of medicine and intervention kind of at an all-time low. It's left for dead. The amount of money put into that bucket is very low. There are ways to solve that. You could put tech towards that and improve the healthy lifespan of people and reduce the cost of healthcare.
That's the big win case.
Yeah.
But I have to be somewhat concerned about the flip side of that, right? Which is all of the problems of the attention economy are now going to get massively worse, right? The last thing I want is an AI model trained on my behavior to give me more of stuff I shouldn't eat, right?
Well, that's what the model has been for the last 20 years. Is that they know what triggers you and they know what to feed you mentally, visually to get your attention. It's the attention economy, and their business models are around that. Now, what if the business model were flipped at like a cost-plus basis to just provide you unbiased best recommendations for you? And you could see the levers, you could see why it's being recommended, why you're getting recommended, say, I don't want this, and it would actually listen to you. I mean, we're getting to the point where that personal AI engine could be a real thing.
Where it gets a little squirrelier to me is like we think of the internet as being one giant thing, and yet, if I ask you what is the source of truth on the frequency of blue light, right? Well, okay, there's actually 1,000 different places you could go to get that. Coding that knowledge base, I think, is really interesting. Wolfram Alpha has done a lot of work there on sort of creating a language of truth, a logical language of knowledge. But it seems like we've got a long way to go. And in between, I worry a little bit that all we're going to do is make, Bing's AI integration and Bard even more predatory than it is already.
The source of truth comment is interesting, right? I mean, Adobe and others have this consortium to be like, how do you verify a video is real? And already in court, you're saying like, this was a doctored image, this wasn't real. And we're getting to a point with what is true is going to be an increasingly complex and important question.
What industries get most disrupted most quickly by this? To me, it's anybody in that attention economy. If you're a search engine provider, if you're Amazon trying to show results, getting it right versus getting it wrong strikes me as a bit of an existential moment, right?
Yes, I mean, it is an existential moment for them. They obviously have other components to them. They have your Gmail, they have calendar. So they have an opportunity to adapt and move and roll with this, but they have to change. Like the standard Google search is not going to look the same 3 years from now, even though that was basically minus adding some advertising tiers and improving the search algorithm. Google had market share, they were making money, and there was no need to rock the boat. You could see a lot of business models shifting, not just search engines, areas that produce content, companies that analyze content, and then manufacturing, automotive, like all of these companies are also seeing a change, right? You've got autonomous vehicles, everyone's kind of looking at autonomous AI, and then like you actually have more, like in China, you've got massive automation and EV electrification. US, we're still kind of working on our grid in EV, but now you kind of have this area coming, and ultimately you've got a convergence of many technologies coming together.
I'm curious, before we wrap up, how has any of this changed your day-to-day workflow? Are you using GPT in interesting ways?
The job gets in the way sometimes of moving forward, but that's just the nature of it. I cover artificial intelligence, robotics, and healthcare. Just seeing and making sure the companies that are in the portfolios are on top of the trend. So that's one thing. It's just like portfolio management and making sure that the infrastructure providers are winners in this change, and that the application and other providers are leaders and continuing to invest and willing to invest.
The challenge has got to be that so much of what's interesting is often happening either in weird little open source projects that you can't invest in, or little private companies that you can't invest in, right?
Yes.
You can't buy OpenAI stock.
No,
right?
Or you can buy Microsoft, which has allocation, and even that runs on Azure AI Cloud,
yes.
which invests in which utilizes technology from NVIDIA.
It's an ecosystem
exactly.
Play,
So looking at the ecosystem and who benefits from these changes, whether it's the IoT, it's the devices, the connectivity. Because the more and more that we rely on this autonomous technology, the more we will rely on not only that truth to be enact, so cybersecurity to make sure that my data going out and being received is a source of truth and safe and is actually being delivered without interference. That's going to be huge. So looking at the AI cybersecurity angle, as well as the whole infrastructure from semiconductor manufacturing all the way through deliverability.
Wow, super interesting. Well, cool. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Fun.
Yeah.